Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is Sunday, December 3rd, 2023. Um, Welcome to Sunday class. Let's make aspiration, set our intentions as we do every week by saying the four immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering, the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Mm. We talk a lot about Garchen Rinpoche. And if you see on Solidago Productions, there's a list of books and teachers, and he's on that list if you need more information about him. But he talks recently. You could probably just Google this, his name and aspirations, but really talks about the importance of aspiration. That it's not just a symbolic thing or a ritual thing, but actually uh, the power in making aspirations and how it's effectiveness, uh and all Buddhist practice, Tibetan Buddhist practice, at least I can only speak for that, is the only lineage I have familiarity with. Practice is always three parts. The first is the motivation, it could be the making aspiration. The second is the actual practice, whatever that is, be it meditation, or sometimes it could be certain prayers or visualizations or things like that. And the third is dedication and merit, which we do at the end of the class. But if you're curious about that, you should look up, Google his name with aspiration. I'll try to find something more specific, as this just occurred to me while we were doing it. Uh, he's been really talking about it quite often as of late. And I think it's important for us to know what we're doing, and why we're doing it. We've explained it a bunch of times, but to have a master of his caliber go into it will be much more beneficial for you. It's kind of setting your consciousness towards the bigger picture. The view of Buddhism, rather than just doing this practice or doing meditation so we feel better, or we feel good and we have a better day, which is not a bad byproduct of it. But the teachings of the Buddha are a lot more vast than that, and encompass the benefit of all beings, not just the benefit of ourselves, right? So today we'll meditate. Victoria has some discussion she's prepared. Would you like to do that before or after the sitting practice?
We could do it before.
Before, okay. So I'm going to read a quote. This is a teacher, James Low, Low, and you can find a lot of his teachings on YouTube. And he's just, I think, wonderful. We've watched a lot of his teachings, and it's very easy they're very approachable, yet they're very steeped in authentic lineage and tradition. So I'll read this quote. There are no things. There are only moments of ungraspable experience arising within the open field of awareness. The more we see that we are integrated in open spaciousness, the more the moments are fine just as they are. We are not the content of our mind, yet we are inseparable from the content of our mind. The content of our mind is experience. It is not essence. Thus, if you have bad times, these bad times don't define who you are. If you get a bit crazy for a while, or you feel collapsed or worthless, and life loses its meaning, if you can relax and be with that, it then passes. To feel that it is all up to me is a very sad and lonely place. Actually, our life is revealed through being with others. Our life comes to us, is given to us when we make the gesture of welcoming it. And sometimes that is happy, sometimes it is sad, but either way, it is a revelation and not a thing you can hang on to. Observe how movement, a gesture in space and time, is an expression or revelation of ungraspable presence. Our open potential shows many forms, as self and as other, yet no appearance defines who we are. We are here, alive, so simply attend to that immediate presence of awareness that is our open ground, the ever-present basis of all our experience. Simply be aware, be present in, with, and as the flow of experience. You know, that often we talk about shunyata, is translated often in English, mostly in English, as emptiness, which encompasses, the emptiness of inherent existence and also dependent arising and interdependence and impermanence, all those things. And we'll also talk about how conceptually you might try to wrap your head around it, but how do we practice that? How do we relate to that in daily life? This is a very good example. This is a very articulate and eloquent example of that, I think. And it's a very hard thing to put into some kind of practical terms. Shunyata, whatever, that giant oneness, fullness, um, emptiness. um, I really love how he expresses it here. It's very beautiful. We are here alive, so simply attend to that immediate presence of awareness that is our open ground. And I think that's why we're here and what we're doing, to learn how to do that. Because to attend to that immediate presence of awareness, takes some training and understanding what that is, and where do we find it, how do we find it. And it's through one of the main methods is through the practice of meditation that we will do today. And with that in mind, Victoria has some stuff she wants to talk about.
This open ground, this openness in which experience can take place, is what is in Buddhism, in Vajrayana Buddhism, and kind of its consummate ultimate view, is called the absolute truth. But the view always holds the two truths as inseparable. So that open space where experience unfolds and allows for it to unfold, being the ultimate condition of all things, of all beings, of all phenomena, because within that space, everything unfolds and returns to it. That's why James Lowe is saying also be patient and be present. Things will unfold and they will cease. Difficult moments will end as they arise, etc. But the two truths are held as inseparable. The relative condition is this arising and falling, the movement of the mind, the movement of experience. But its ultimate condition is always this open space of awareness where things arise and they dissipate back into that space. So the two truths is really kind of the most fundamental thing of Buddhism, but it's not fundamental only as this kind of a theoretical, hypothetical thing. I know this about Buddhism, this label, I'm gonna hold this. No, we're supposed to really take that and integrate it into our experience. And there was actually again, we didn't synchronize anything, but very much the teaching of James Lowe, who's also um, not only a Buddhist scholar, amazing practitioner, amazing teacher, also does psychoanalytic or psychological work with people and brings that whole dimension of how the ego struggles in that arising and falling of moments of experience, of moments of relative level of reality, which is not to be denigrated because the two truths are always together. The shunyata and the moments of experience rising and falling, they're always integrated. It's the same nature. That is what our awareness is. And like he says, we're not exactly our content of experience, and yet we are integrally interconnected with it. It's the nature of our mind within this vastness to call the movement rising and falling. And we don't really call on thoughts, like Heidegger says, we don't come to thoughts, they come to us. Things arise because they're moved by their own energy. In our case, they're moved by karmic energy, but they're still moved within the spaciousness of our Buddha nature, the ground awareness, the what is referred to as shunyata or reality or the ultimate truth or prajna paramita. All those words are a synonym for this ungraspable, unnameable openness, the spaciousness. Often in Buddhist literature, Buddhist literature refers to our experience as experience of life, variety of experiences of life, as a dream, as a series of dreams, and therefore often it's referred to as an illusion. And Buddhism dedicates a tremendous amount of energy and space and time trying to understand the nature of this dream without denigrating it. In fact, the dream of reality is all important in order to understand the ground tenets of Buddhist thinking and therefore practice. We, on the other hand, as Westerners, when something is called a dream, we right away translate it into our thesaurus and plug it into our way of thinking, and right away we come up with some kind of a negative judgment and shut it down. We call it bad, we call it unimportant, untrue, non-existent, a mere nothing, etc. But all that does is slap a label, and we still don't know anything. Why do Buddhists call this a relative level of reality a dream, an illusion? What we need to try to figure out what that means. Instead of shutting it down by sticking a label on it. We really don't understand the nature of this twofold dream. And the twofold is because we have the waking portion of the dream and the sleeping portion of the dream. Mainly in Buddhism, the sleeping portion of a dream is like a thicker version of dreaming. It's like double illusion. Not all of the dreams, but most of the dreams. That's why we don't attach tremendous value to them. It's still the karmic winds movement that gives us, the sleeping dreams. A lot of times we process our worries and our anxieties as we lay down to sleep. We further continue this, work of the conceptual dualistic mind. We continue this movement, and this movement is stimulated by the energy of ignorance, by our by our worries, by our anxieties, the things we feel like are left over, things that often we have, things that we call guilt or unfinished business. And a lot of times that's what goes into our dream reality. So the twofold dream, the one dream of the waking reality and the other dream, which no one else can perceive, our very individual dream, is when we lay down to sleep. And yet Buddhism tells us to cultivate the awareness of our current experience of reality as the important thing to pay attention to, as a dream state, and encourages us to practice perceiving this experience of life as a dream state. And why is that? What does that mean? It means knowing that our perceptions, experiences, are not perceptions of what is called ultimately real. Rather, they are projections, labels, projections based on an infinite amount of karmic factors, current and previous lives, of current and previous experiences. Even when these experiences have shared qualities, for example, right now we are in the realm of sentient beings that are called human beings, as opposed to other realms, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, etc. But everything is still processed through our particular individual jar of where our mind is pickled. We are not just looking at reality. We're always looking at reality through that jar, through where we are cured, through where we are made. Our particular karmic influences, everything that shaped our relative awareness thus far. So we're never looking at anything other than through our perceptions, because reality is an experience. It's not a concept. We experience reality through the karmic factors, through how we were formed through many, many, many lifetimes, not just this lifetime. How we're formed in this lifetime, every current moment is also informed and preceded by the previous moments. And so our totality of the now is always bringing all that together, and also bringing in the interdependent character of relative reality, is bringing all the factors that shape us that are not dependent on us, but that are a part of everything where we are right now. So our world is always this product or byproduct of the individual and things that are linked to us to create this individual picture of the world. And I came upon a fantastic teaching recently of Eric Pema Kunzang, who created a Tibetan dictionary, who was a student of Organ Tulku Rinpoche for many, many years, was his main translator, and is an amazing practitioner and an amazing teacher. And it was a teaching on the Bardo of dreams. And Eric spoke about, or started this teaching by making us think about the screen and the projections, all the movies that we project on the screen. But often we're so trapped in the movies, the relative level of life and experiences, of what is happening, the content, as James Lowe called it, to which we are so bound. But Eric said, please pay attention to the screen. Without the screen, there would be no movies. All this relative level stuff are movies, or a synonym for it is dreams. That's why it's called dreams. But pay attention to the screen, like what James Lowe was saying. Whatever can arise can only arise in this open spaciousness, the ground. And that is also our awareness. The screen is also our awareness. In fact, without that awareness, without the screen, projections and all this content could never ever happen. And in Buddhism, that screen is the thing that we share with all the Buddhas. That screen, what we refer to as prajnaparamita, when we think of the ultimate wisdom aspect, knowing the screen is prajnaparamita, connecting to our nature, to the ultimate wisdom. We call it emptiness. We call it dharmata. It's the space of where everything arises. And that space is primordially pure. Think of it like a mirror. In a mirror, bad things can happen. A bad movie can happen in the mirror. A horrendous act can happen in the mirror. And the next moment, a beautiful act, a blossoming of the most beautiful thing can happen in the mirror. And the mirror doesn't have to be wiped down in between the horrible and the most profoundly beautiful. The mirror is capable of accepting everything without judgment, without having to be wiped down. The mirror is never actually influenced by what happens inside it. Who's influenced is we're influenced on a relative level. It's either we're making more negative karma or we're starting to understand that the movement, the movie projection has something to do with us, and that we actually, instead of just denigrating the relative aspect to saying, oh, well, movies are just this, relative unimportant thing, it's an illusion, so nothing. No, it's actually the thing that shapes us. And it's the thing that either like brings us closer to the Buddhahood or brings us down to lower levels, to lower realms, because we are responsible for how we dream. We are responsible for how we project the movies. If we connect to the screen and we have the openness and we can suspend this running and acting on an impulse of the ego, on acting on our stupidity, on acting on our five afflictive emotions, if we connect closer to, if we bring the awareness of the screen into everything that's happening, we can bring patience, we can bring tolerance. In fact, those are the two kinds of ways of being in the world. They're always available to us. That's why they always say samsara and nirvana are inseparable. Why? Because we can create the suffering, or we can bring the screen and not create the suffering for self and other. If we bring the screen, if we bring this total awareness, if we bring and are aware of this absolute ground, we can suspend acting on negativity. We can suspend the activity of the ego, which is always suffering, the ego that always wants more, is never satisfied, is always, brings around that cloud of, that covers our sense of awareness. You know, where there's suffering, there's ego. The ego is always struggling against reality because the ego wants more. The ego wants it like this. The ego wants things to be permanent. The ego is never satisfied, but when we bring the awareness, when we are aware of the screen and we remember that this bad movie will end, this bad experience will end, but I have this ultimate nature of the open awareness of the screen. We identify with that more and more, and each moment we have a choice. We can modify. We don't have this total control because we're driven by karmic energies, and obviously our environment is a part of the karmic energies that drive things. But if we don't keep reacting from this internal space always, through the ego, but act through our awareness, we begin to modify, sowing the seeds, uh, karmic seeds, sowing negativity. If somebody says a hurtful word to us, we remember the screen, we remember the openness, and we don't process that sound that's made in someone's throat and is expelling of their negative emotion onto us. We don't take it so personally. We have the patience, we can wait it out. We can also say that person is now being driven and guided by these impulses, but I can wait. I can have the patience. I have the awareness of the screen, and we're happening at the same time together. So I don't need to pour the gasoline on the fire of that event. I can wait it out. I can wait until the storm dies down, because ultimately, like James Lowe says, being present is also remembering that whatever arises will cease and will be replaced by the next moment, by the next experience. We don't have to get crazy and explode within each thing. And it's actually when we stop reacting but can be present with the patience, with the spaciousness of our awareness, be on the side of the screen and not just be caught up and trapped in movies and the nightmares. We can actually act. It's the only time that we actually can act rather than react, and not be these karmic factories that, because if that person says a word to us, it's very hurtful, but we just jump out and through the ego we do the same thing. We've sown with that sound, we've sown another karmic seed, and we can only expect to be hit by that sound again and again and again. So uh, this screen is a ground awareness, and it is called the mother of all the Buddhas. And we are identical with all the Buddhas, and we have the Buddha nature in that screen, in that ground awareness. What is different, we may ask, is that Buddhas remain in direct perception of reality, in that openness of the screen, the mother, without playing movies and without being caught up in the movies. That's pretty much, that's the difference. But these movies, the movement of the mind, we have a lot of control over them, not on the outside, but on the inside, in our internal space. So cultivating a certain motivation, waking up and saying to oneself, I vow today to stay more present, to not be caught, to not be in the clutches of my ego reactivity, but to stay on the side of awareness. We can shape a lot. We can certainly remove at least the negativity out of what's already happening. Removing our little piece of negativity is all we can do for now, but it creates a tremendous change. There is no amount of positive action, positive motivation, positive thought. And by the way, Dzongchen Cancer Rinpoche talks a lot about motivation because that's what's in our control. It's not in our control. Once the word escapes and the action goes out there, karma's already produced, But on the inside, in the internal space of the screen of awareness, we can shape how we're going to respond, what we're going to say, what we're going to do. So not pouring the fuel on the fire and not being childish and saying, he said this, she said this is, not being caught in the whirlwind of the ego, but staying on the side of awareness, having patience, cultivating discipline over our body, speech, and mind. Those are the things that we can do. And it is, it's our intention that shapes our karma. So being aware of that is also called, having awareness of the screen is actually what is called meditation. Being aware of it, we don't need to sit anywhere under a special tree, waiting until everybody shuts up. No, awareness is exactly like in a crowded subway. It is in a difficult situation when your parent is scolding you or some relative is telling you you're an idiot because you believe, this and this, etc., etc. You're not buying into like this movies of the news and the hatred and all these kinds of mundane movements that are happening and overtaking us right now, but staying on the side of awareness, setting your own intention in your own way, in face of your teachers instead of your Buddha nature, in face of that empty screen of reality. At least not creating more negativity if we set our intentions that way every day and we reinforce it, moment to moment, especially when negativity is just right there, right in our throat, right in our heart, about to burst out. That's really like a trigger point saying, wait, stop, take a moment, think about it, don't say, don't do, wait it out, not reacting, but acting. And acting is staying with awareness. And that same thing is also what is called meditation, being aware of the spacious nature of the mind while observing all the movements and waiting out and not getting caught in them. That's meditation. And, for us, for Buddhists, that is what the practice is. And we have to bring it everywhere all the time. So I hope that it helps.
Yeah, and bringing it everywhere all the time is a result of practice. So just reading something in a book or hearing somebody say it uh, doesn't mean now it's integrated. Now my life is going to be different. In our culture often is like we want to read a book, a self-help book, and like, that's going to be the solution or give me the answer to how to handle every problem. We're talking about really working with the mind, you know, to be able to, relate to that state of awareness, that open state of awareness, to bring that into situations. A lot of people, a friend yesterday, I told that we teach a meditation class, and my friend, "Oh, I think I can use a meditation class. I'm always so stressed out. I'm always so busy." And it's good that you realize something's not right, or something, something needs attending to. Um, and that can bring you towards wanting to practice meditation or study Buddhism, some kind of spiritual path or things like that. But it's not just about making your samsaric activities easier. We can't confuse what we're doing with that. You know what I mean? It's actually really working with the mind to start to really see actually what is this samsaric activity? Why is there samsaric activity? Why are we even here? What's going on? Um, how do I relate not only to, my busy life or my stressful life, but to the people in my life, the immediate people in my life, the strangers that come into my life on a daily basis, my relationship to the world at large. Those things, um, take a really recalibration of how we've looked at things. And it really starts with sitting meditation practice. Um, really relating to what the mind is doing, how it does things, how it moves, how the thoughts move. It's not just going to come from agreeing or disagreeing with something somebody says, or something you read somewhere, which seems to be very prevalent in our time. People are defined by what they agree with or don't agree with, and that agreement or disagreement is enough, defines them, makes them feel they're on the right side or against the wrong side. So this is why the teachings themselves, the authentic teachings from authentic lineages that have been, we can kind of trace them, directly back to teachings of the Buddha, are so important. It's not just another person's opinion. It's not just something somebody tried, or the latest fad, or the latest, distillation of a bunch of spiritual things. Um, it's wisdom that's been handed down because it's been discovered to be authentic and be the truth and be effective and have that capability of transcendence in those things. So with that, let's
I just want
sit. Sure.
I want to add one last thing. There's a very palpable quality. So you will know that you're bringing and connecting to your ultimate nature, to your ultimate dimension, when your mind, because true awareness and being connected to that spaciousness is very inclusive, is very tolerant. It's kind of the most free space for anything to occur. If you are experiencing your life as that, you know you're connecting to your Buddha nature, to your ground. Whereas that very constricted, ugly space of battle and emotion and everything is the thing of the ego, of the ignorance. So it's a very palpable quality. You will know when you're practicing, when your mind is open and connecting to that screen, to the ground, to the mother, and looking at movies and going, let them happen. I know this is like this now, but it's a film, it'll end, and etc. Have space to be able to experience, and it is a very specific quality that we experience. It's not conceptual, it's a perceptual quality.
So most of you have done this before, but we'll do a really, really, really brief review. Sitting, I sit on a cushion. It's good to sit on a cushion because it it's good if, especially if you're new, your hips should be aligned or above your knees. It takes some of the strain off your lower back. Some of you are more flexible, limber. You can probably do it without a cushion. It's up to you. You can be cross-legged. If you're flexible, want to put one leg over the other, like they call that half lotus, that's fine. If you can't sit on the floor or on a cushion, you can sit in a chair. Just make sure your back is straight. You're not, leaning back or collapsed, and your feet, your legs should be kind of at a right angle almost. And again, the hips aligned or above the knees, feet flat on the floor if you're in a chair. So the back is straight, not rigid, not like at attention like a soldier. Straight and relaxed. We use that example of the guitar string. Too tight, it doesn't make a tone. Too loose, it doesn't make a tone. But with proper amount of tension, it rings out the proper sound. Same thing with the body. There's an alertness, but there's also a subtle suppleness as well. The head is slightly tilted forward. Teeth are apart a little bit. Lips are closed and tongue is resting where the teeth meet the upper palate. And we're breathing through our mouth. Unless you can't, you're congested or you have, that kind of problem, breathe through your mouth. In this class and in how we've been trained, we meditate with our eyes open. And the gaze is not a spaced out, unfocused, nor is it a like really intense staring at. It's kind of resting the gaze on whatever's in front of you. And whatever's in front of you doesn't really matter. It can be something inspiring, like a picture of Buddha or a view or a flower or a sky or something, but it doesn't have to be. And the hands, you can rest either on your knees, or you could do this left hand, palm open, back of the right hand, touching thumbs. Some people touch the ring finger, whatever's comfortable. So we're in that pose. We're breathing. We're not doing really deep, long breaths. We're not doing short breaths. We're doing really even, normal, relaxed breath. Let's just do that 3 times. If you're brand new, focus your attention on the place where your breath moves, where the nostrils meet the upper lip. Just focus your attention there. Those of you who have done this, you know what to do. And if your attention wanders and a thought arises, we just ask that you notice that fact. Just notice that a thought has arisen and say to yourself, back to the breath. Upon noticing the thought has arisen, don't just say back to the breath and put your attention back there. Or if you're using the visualization of the clear, limitless, stainless, infinite blue sky, and the thought as the cloud that has arisen within that sky, we watch that cloud, that thought dissolve back into the sky from where it came without leaving any trace or any mark or stain. The key is to become aware that a thought has arisen. And when the thought has arisen, not to follow the thought into another thought, a thought relating to that thought, a thought trying to solve that thought, or not rejecting that thought, pushing it away, judging it as something bad that shouldn't be in your mind, but just leaving it where it is, back to the breath. We're leaving it, watch it dissolve back into the sky, and then resting again in that spaciousness. If you're new, you may have many, many, many thoughts that you have to keep recognizing and going back to the breath with, or dissolving into the sky. And that's totally okay. It's not about the quantity or, you know, how much or how little. It's just working with the mind. That's it. Working with the mind. If you need a big gulp of oxygen because you feel a little, that you need it, go ahead and do it. If you feel tense and you need to shift, don't feel like you can't move. Shift your weight, settle back in. If you're sitting today with some very strong emotion, anger, sadness, grief, something like that, we work with the mind the same way in terms of the thought, but that sensation, that energy of emotion, may not dissipate the same way the thought does, but just allow yourself to sit with that feeling, whatever it is, that energy. Just allow it to just be there. Don't feel like it's wrong or that it shouldn't be there because you're meditating. Just stick to the posture, stick to the breath, watch the mind, see what thought has arisen, back to the breath. Really settle into that calm spaciousness, sky-like nature of mind. Let it be your refuge. Back to the breath. Whatever thought has arisen, notice. Back to the breath. Leave it where it is. Watch it dissolve. Back into the sky. Limitless clarity, calm, open, spacious mind, sky. Mind looking at mind. What is becoming aware of the thought that has arisen? What has the awareness of the thought that has arisen in the mind? The mind is aware of what's going on in the mind. Back to the breath. Excellent. Those of you who are new, we encourage you, if this interests you, you know, this really has only really has an effect if it becomes part of something, you know, becomes something regular, as often, as daily, as more uh, routine you can make it, the better. And also for those of you who have been doing it a while, you know, to continue to try to bring that awareness, that mind looking at mind into, you know, our daily situations. Sometimes you meet people who say, well, riding my bike is my meditation, or painting is my meditation. But when you're in the midst of, you know, going about your daily activity, or online waiting to get on the bus, and, you know, things are agitating you and stuff, you're not going to paint a painting or ride a bike, but you can meditate. Meditation is meditation. There can be a meditative quality to riding a bicycle, calms you, settles you, but it's not actual meditation. You know what I mean? So, um, this direct working on the mind, with working with the mind, sitting meditation practice is really, I don't think it really happens without that.
And I just wanted to add to that. So there should be a sense of freedom when the mind is looking at the movie of how the experience arises. But I call it a movie or dreams, and you know, traditionally in Buddhism, it's called, you know, illusory or dream-like reality, because it's a conglomerate of so many different things. It's looking through so many prisms, you know, through the little jar of our identity or identities, through, you know, many many lifetimes. But knowing that shouldn't be a thing of disappointment. It's just understanding that, well, I'm the filmmaker here, so I can ease off, I can rewrite the script, I can make the script softer, the movie will end. And always connecting to the awareness that sees the screen upon which all these things are projected, not identifying with the movies, identifying with the screen.
People asking the name of the Rinpoche, Zonsar Khyentse Rinpoche. So if you go to Solidago Productions website, his he's listed there among the books and teachers. It's Dzongsar. Khyentse, Khyentse, Rinpoche. Uh, Lots of his teachings on YouTube. If you're on Instagram, which I assume you are, that's how we've really probably found these classes. Siddhartha's Intent and Khyentse Foundation are two Instagram sites related to him. The other quote that we read is from James Lowe, Low. I'm not sure. I don't have a link to that video. I found that on an Instagram page called Mind Michael. It's not me. It's not my page. It's a man named Michael Gregory who shares some really nice Buddhist teachings.
But there's lots of teachings of James Lowe on YouTube. Lots of fantastic Dzogchen teachings.
Okay. I really appreciate more Buddhism content this section. Can we please have more of that instead of just straight secular meditation practice each week? Thank you. Yes, um, this class began as secular meditation class, and then because of popular demand, we introduced some Dharma talk. But yeah, we do. If you're here regularly, we especially Victoria, usually covers some topic of discussion. Um, I've been meditating for a long time. I struggle with keeping my eyes open. It's so hard. Um, Maybe you should change what's in front of you. Maybe that'll make it easier. I don't want to say what to do or what to use. Maybe you need something less stimulating, like a blank wall or a sky, or maybe you need something that's a little more defined, like a flower, even an image of the Buddha. You don't want something that's going to create a lot of a story, that take your mind into some kind of story. Why it's a benefit is because, again, we're practicing for not just, meditation is not just about sitting on a cushion, it's bringing this level of awareness that we're cultivating into our daily lives. Life usually is most challenging when our eyes are open, when we're dealing with others, when we're dealing with situations in the world. Um, so that's why it's particularly good, I think, for the eyes to be open.
Especially for the beginners, because we tend to, if in the beginning we are not working with our mind and the content of our mind, being aware of these two dimensions of the relative and the absolute parts of our mind, they're inseparable. I shouldn't say parts, the inseparable nature of the mind. Because it's the mind that's always observing experiences arise, the contents arise. But if it helps at all, try to make your gaze, try to look at space rather than things, objects. Don't focus so sharply on the objects. Keep the eyes very, very soft and try to gaze beyond. You can sometimes think of the space, what is outside past these walls, and focus more on the space quality, so that when things do arise in your mind, they're not so acute and sharp, and you feel like you're stuck within those parameters. Know your mind to be able to think even of your mind in the back of your head, at the top of the ceiling, outside of the building, etc., etc. The mind has that space-like quality, and that's what we want to tune into in the meditation session. uh, Watch the screen, not just the contents, the movies.
Yeah, so someone said talking about the gaze. Yeah, usually it's you're following the bridge of your nose with the gaze. I didn't mention that today, but that's usually the way it's taught. And then sometimes you can, if you're kind of sleepy, foggy, you can raise the angle of your gaze, and that can wake you up a little bit. And if you're following the bridge of your nose and the gaze angle of the gaze, right? It's kind of following the way we tilt our head. So the gaze is kind of following that rather than the head being tilted and the eyes looking two different directions, which causes a little strain. If you get very agitated, particularly mentally, lowering the angle of your gaze can sometimes help calm that a little bit.
But the key is not to stare at something. The key is not to be experiencing visual information. The key is really just looking at the space of your mind where all these things kind of the content is, and connecting to that space like quality of the mind.
This is a very good question. And it's something that a lot of people are confused about and unclear about when, especially when they start to practice or be introduced to some of the practices. I find it hard to be patient because I'm afraid of being passive. Can you define the difference between being between patience and passivity?
Everything has to be informed by bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is when we set our intention before class, we are saying for the benefit of all sentient beings. If you take out of the formula that everything that happens around me and in the world is always for me and is always in terms of me, how does it affect me? What's in it for me? If you take that out and actually have the mind, uh, in Buddhism, we start, that's the Alpha and Omega, the setting the intention for the benefit of all sentient beings and dedicating all the merit of practice to all sentient beings is the Alpha and Omega. What happens in between is just training. It's like, muscle work. But the Alpha and Omega is having the mindset of all sentient beings. That's where the patience comes from, observing, and knowing, examining and analyzing, is my mind set on the benefit of all sentient beings, or am I just being this kind of childish mind? What's in it for me? And losing the fear, what's in it for me is going to get determined on a karmic level anyway. We cannot really influence that much. What we have influence over is the internal space of our energy that is set with our intention, how we view things, how we understand them. In space of awareness, we can receive everything with patience because there's spaciousness. We can look at it and not get triggered and jumped because we're not working with our ego, through our ego. Patience is having that level of awareness, and that's what we cultivate in meditation and bring it into all the every situation is a place for meditation. We're That's where we need the awareness. We need the awareness not so much on the cushion. We train on the cushion, but we need it in life. It's for life. It's for what happens when we are interacting. So knowing and bringing that a state of practice into everything, and that, ordinary things, and that's where you cultivate your patience by spaciousness. Somebody saying a bad word, let them know that they're right now being influenced by a lot of negativity and triggered by these karmic winds to say ugly, horrible things, but that will end and that person may have a lot of remorse. And for us is to just create the spaciousness, and also to know that whatever arises in the moment will subside. That is patience. Having that awareness of impermanence and interconnectedness, that is patience.
And I also think what you're talking about is cultivating wisdom as well, which comes from hearing the teachings, pondering the teachings, integrating the teachings, meditation practice. Um, Here's an example, right? You're talking about passivity and patience. So you get off the train and you got to go up the stairs, and there's a woman with a little baby and a stroller and an old person, and you're a little bit late. Now you can choose to kind of squeeze through and maybe, you know, disrupt their going up, which has to be very careful and slow because of, being old or having a kid. Or you can just choose to be patient and let it take how long it's going to take, and you're going to be a little bit late. Is that being passive?
Could also help the lady with the stroller and, accomplish the benefit of self and other. I mean, it's about being aware. am I functioning like this little,
Yeah.
pickle jar? Is it just for me and what I need right now? Am I being driven only by that small, tiny little aspect of the ego, or am I using my awareness in totality? It's
Right.
that's creating space is using patience. Using a wisdom mind
Wisdom
is
mind.
patience. Uh,
So you're actually going to define the difference between patience and passivity. It's not for me to tell you what the difference is. You have to discover that. You may have one view of what that is now, but if you practice and study, that view may change. You know what I mean? And passivity, being a Buddhist, if you're on the train and someone's getting harmed by another person, to say, oh, I just wish that wasn't happening, you may be in a situation where you have to intervene. And that's not just about being patient, that's being present. So maybe it's really about define the difference between being present and being passive.
but
That's
being
another distinction we can start to like look at and make.
sorry, and also think of passivity as being triggered by the ego, the habitual, ordinary, ignorant mind. That's passivity. If you're just always triggered, I need more, I need it faster, I want it like this, that's passivity, because those are simply trigger points of our ego on us. Whereas wisdom mind and having the spaciousness and seeing yourself in relationship to others and out of space knowing how to act, what to say, how to do, that's certainly not passivity. It requires a lot of work and a lot of clarity.
Yeah. And Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche talks about patience as, and if you're a Dharma practitioner, or someone who's committing to some kind of spiritual path, patience as an obligation. He's not talking anything about passivity or being a doormat. Patience as an obligation, because when you connect to the idea of being patient in a situation that normally you'd be impatient in, you'd be, connected to the self. I need to be first. I need to get this done. I need people out of my way. Uh, when you connect to the patience, that spacious quality, you know, something else happens. Some new experience happens that wouldn't happen before because you were so wrapped up in grasping and the self and those things. Um, but this also comes from, again, we're talking about not just hearing me say it or Victoria say it, what the difference is. It's really a result of practice, study, pondering, meditating, and trial and error, and seeing how that works in your life. It's not just a pithy saying, you know what I mean?
And also what James Lowe, the quote that Michael read at the top of the class, when James Lowe said, we are is what happens when we relate to others, right? And when we are at home, we are alone in our space of meditation. Formally, let's say we set our respiration. I am going to be like this. I am not going to be triggered by my ego. I am going to stay in my awareness. This is, you plant the seed, you plant the stake, you plant the goal, but you really only can experience that in relationship to others. How can you experience who you are? Are you a practitioner? Are you this person who has that mind of benefit, for self? And, the self is always included in the benefit of all. So, that can only happen, and we observe ourselves happening, we occur in relationship to others. So if we can see and observe ourselves happening in relationship to other within the space of bodhicitta, without the space of awareness, uh, that's everything. That is all the paramitas. It is patience, and it is perseverance, and it is generosity, and all those things. And of course, wisdom, because it happens out of the space of wisdom. The other paramitas, the other, five perfections don't happen without the space of wisdom.
This is my first experience with this. I found that my mind was full of noise, as it often is. I struggle with anxiety. That's a very, very the most common reaction to starting meditation practice. I mean, I remember the same thing when I did. Mind full of noise, struggling with anxiety. I think everyone on the planet at the moment struggles with anxiety to varying degrees, of course, but certainly extremely, extremely common. Are there little ways in which I can start to figure out how to let that go? Exactly what we did today. If you commit to this practice, and it can be in the beginning really short amounts of short sessions, short amounts of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Um, the more you commit to to practices, the more you read, you connect to teachers. Uh, Resources, go to the website again, Solidago Productions. There's teachers, there's books, and all those teachers have teachings on YouTube. Get on their mailing lists. You can do virtual retreats, you could do virtual, teachings, or in person if you see they're coming to where you are or you want to go where they are. It's um the more you commit, the more effort you put, obviously the more results you're going to get, like anything.
And remember, anxiety is the space, is the content, and the content often can be so overwhelming, especially when thoughts are just triggered over and over and over, through our memory, through whatever mechanisms. We're dwelling, and there's never that spaciousness of just like a little pause connecting to the screen. So that's what meditation is, and there's nothing to be done with anxiety other than to learn how to relax and be with it and into it, and then it just becomes like an arm that squeezes you less. Same for all of us, of course.
Well, we have time for one last question for today. First time here. Is it possible to overcompensate with passivity, overly nice, going above and beyond for everyone in your life? I think my girlfriend that practices Buddhism struggles a lot with being too nice, being overly helpful. And hearing you guys talk, I realize a lot of the stuff she does that I define as too nice is just my ego wanting her for myself. Well, I mean, think about what you're saying first, though. You're saying overcompensate with passivity, yet this is somebody who's going above and beyond doing things for everyone else. So that there's nothing passive about that. That's actually very active if she's going above and beyond for people in their life. Being, you say too nice, but being overly helpful. That might seem strange to you in a society that, is a me first society. Get ahead. I need to be number one. I need to be this and I need to be that. Somebody who's, coming from a more altruistic motivation might seem foolish because of what we're conditioned to. Again, you know, the cultivation of wisdom, which comes through hearing, pondering, and meditating on the teachings and practicing, allows us to see these things more clearly. Is it possible to become somebody who's, you know, if she's going above and beyond and doing things because it's aggrandizing her own self or some kind of masochistic thing of diminishing this, of punishing the self, or kind of, what's the word? Negating, no, that's not the word. You know what I'm
If
saying?
one is expecting a result at
No,
the
I
end of
mean,
this,
what the word when you do something that's about, I guess, kind of a masochism, that kind of thing, martyr, kind of becoming a martyr for anyone else. Then it's just another ego thing, you know. But if it's truly coming from a sense of altruistic, being benefit of others and wanting to really actualize that in the world, that's not passive. Nor is it necessarily, this aggrandizement of the ego to seem saintly or something like that, So, yeah, I think you're wise to think, uh, is it your ego wanting her for yourself? Possibly. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that, if in doing altruistic activity, we are expecting results, then it's not altruistic activity. if we are doing altruistic activity just because it is the right activity to perform. It's a cause for happiness, you know. It is the exactly very thing that diminishes the suffering. Maybe you want to be more like her. Well, obviously, you're living together with a very beautiful, or you're together with a very beautiful person.
That's why it's also good to connect to authentic teachers, masters, from authentic lineages, because you see that altruistic spirit, you see that bodhicitta, that compassion in action. You see it in the real world, how somebody embodies that and lives through it. And there's nothing passive about it at all. There's something very tranquil. There can be something very tranquil and peaceful about it, but uh, it's actually so full of energy and so active when you see that radiating compassion and just every activity and action kind of being related to the benefit of all beings. If you see their teachers that can inspire us in that way, I think that's why it's really, really important to connect to authentic teachers of the authentic lineages, because that'll point you in the right direction much more than anything I say. To be honest. So with that, let's dedicate the merit, because there is something meritorious, virtuous about coming together and sitting and trying to calm this ego mind and relate to a more altruistic spirit. There's something meritorious about that, but we want that merit not just for our own happiness, but so that merit gets dedicated to the benefit of all beings. So we say this: by this merit may all
All
beings
beings
attain the
attain the
state of
state of
enlightenment
enlightenment,
and conquer the
conquer the
enemies of
enemies of
faults and
false
delusions.
illusions.
May they
They
be
be
liberated
liberated
from
from
this
the
ocean
awesome
of
of
samsara
samsara
and
and
its
its
pounding
pounding
waves
waves
of
of
birth,
birth,
old
old
age,
age,
sickness,
sickness,
and death.
and death. And
Thank
thank you
you,
all.
and thank you, Nick Solidio, our producer, who, through his kindness and generosity, makes this class possible. See you soon.